right, everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. You ready to get our learn on today?
Always ready to dive in.
Perfect. So today we're heading back, way back to ancient Greece. But get this, we're not talking like myths and legends and all that.
Right.
This time it's all about education, ancient Greek style. And trust me, it's way more dramatic than you might think.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to jump into this whole debate between philosophers and, well, the Sophists.
Oh, yeah. Big debate. Huge, actually, and one that still has people talking even all these centuries later.
Exactly. And to help us unpack all of this, we're going to be looking closely at Isocrates. Now, he was definitely not on Team Sophist, let me tell you.
Not a fan, no.
No. His work Against the Sophists, it's basically like reading a really scathing online review, you know, the kind that just tears apart some like so-called educational program.
Yeah, like those ones that are always popping up on your feed promising to like make you a millionaire by next week.
Yeah.
Right. But in Isocrates' case, he's taking aim at these sophists. Now they were an interesting bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not your typical academics.
Right. Not stuck in some ivory tower.
No. Think more like independent scholars, teachers who traveled around, sharing their knowledge, but also some of them, let's be honest, they were probably a bit like those salespeople who make promises that sound a little too good to be true.
Okay, so Isocrates, he's not buying what they're selling. He's calling them out, right? Like,
Yeah.
what were his main beefs with these sophists?
Well, he had a few. He really takes them to task for their big overblown promises like instant success, that kind of thing. And he criticizes them for constantly bashing those traditional academics.
Yeah, like they thought they were like so above it all, right?
Right, yeah. But one of the things that really gets under Isocrates' skin, it's their whole deal with money. They charged fees for their teaching, which, okay, fine, that wasn't always unusual, but Isocrates points out this like contradiction. See, they charged these fees, but at the same time they were like, "Oh, we totally despise wealth."
I was like, come on, guys, really?
Right. And it's even more kind of jarring when you think about like some of them were basically promising like to make their students immortal, for a handful of coins. It's a bit much.
Okay, so to be fair to the sophists, maybe we need a little like historical context here. Why was this whole money thing such a big deal in ancient Greece?
Yeah, good point. We have to remember that in ancient Greece, speaking, it was everything. It was like the way you got ahead in life. Think business deals, persuading people, politics, building your reputation.
So like being a good speaker, back then it was kind of like having a huge following on social media today.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you couldn't speak well, you were at a serious disadvantage.
So these sophists, I mean, in a way they were kind of like communication coaches, right? They were helping people navigate this very oral culture.
Right. Yeah, you can see why their skills would be in high demand. But Isocrates, he wasn't impressed. He thought they were too focused on style, on like just the tricks of persuasion, and not enough on actual wisdom and real knowledge.
Got it. So for him, it was like they were missing the whole point of education, right? Like he contrasts these sophists with people like Plato, right? And Plato wasn't just a philosopher; he was a mathematician or writer, like just a brilliant mind in so many areas. Like we'd probably call him a Renaissance man today.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the kind of well-rounded education that Isocrates was all about. For him, it wasn't just about mastering one skill or becoming a like smooth talker. It was about like cultivating the whole person, developing their intellect, their character, their ability to think critically. He even used this Greek word paideusis to describe this ideal of education he had in mind.
Paidoisis. Okay, I'm intrigued. So what exactly did that mean? What did paidoisis actually look like in practice?
Well, it wasn't just about cramming your head full of facts or learning a specific skill set. It was more about like creating someone who could think for themselves, learn on their own, and actually contribute something meaningful to society. Someone who could keep learning and growing even after they left school.
So it's like he was aiming for lifelong learners,
right?
Not just people who could like parrot back information.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where the role of the teacher, it becomes so important, crucial, really, in Isocrates' view. He believed the teacher wasn't just there to deliver information. They were a model, a guide, showing students not just what to learn, but how to learn.
Interesting. So is he saying like students should just like copy their teachers? What about like developing their own voice, their own style?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it gets to the heart of like how Isocrates viewed the whole learning process. See, he believed that by like really observing, imitating a skilled teacher, students could start to internalize not just specific techniques, but the underlying principles, the why behind those techniques, so that eventually they could go beyond just imitating and start to create something truly original.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But what about like natural talent? I mean, did Isocrates think everyone had the potential to become this like amazing communicator, or did he think some people were just like born with a knack for it?
Oh, the nature versus nurture debate.
Yeah.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And that's exactly where we'll pick things up next time. We'll dive into what Isocrates really meant by natural talent and how that all fits into his whole vision of education.
Ooh, I'm already hooked. Can't wait to unpack that more. Welcome back to the deep dive.
So last time, things got kind of like philosophical. We were talking about whether Isocrates, that ancient Greek educator we've been unpacking, whether he was team nature or team nurture. Like, did he believe you had to be born a brilliant speaker, or could anyone learn the art of persuasion?
Yeah, it's a question that really gets to the core of his whole educational philosophy. Like what did he really think about natural talent?
Right, because when you read his work, he does mention natural talent, but it's kind of tricky because you could easily interpret that as him saying like, oh well, some people are just born with it and the rest of us are out of luck. Yeah, no, you're right. It could sound that way, but I think there's a bit more nuance to it than that. Like,
Yeah.
if we really dig into his writings, we can see that Isocrates he doesn't totally dismiss the idea of natural aptitude. Like, he acknowledges that some people might be predisposed to certain skills. Maybe they have a quicker mind, or they're just naturally charismatic.
Okay, so it's not like he's saying, nope, natural talent doesn't exist, everyone's a blank slate. He's acknowledging that some people might have a bit of a head start.
Right, exactly. But here's the thing, and this is important. He doesn't see natural talent as the end of the story. He sees it more like raw potential. Like clay that needs to be molded and shaped through education and practice, lots of practice.
So even if you're lucky enough to be born with that gift of gab, you can't just coast on that. You still got to put in the work.
Totally. For Isocrates, natural talent, it was just the starting point. He believed that even those with exceptional natural abilities, they could totally waste that potential if they didn't cultivate it, through discipline, study, and training.
Wow. So he's kind of saying that hard work and dedication can actually trump natural talent, or at least they're essential for actually reaching your full potential, right?
Exactly. And this connects to some really interesting discussions happening in education today. Think about all those debates about talent versus effort, or the whole idea of a growth mindset, the idea that abilities can be developed.
Yeah.
Isocrates was way ahead of his time in recognizing that learning, it's not a fixed state. It's a dynamic process, and everyone has the capacity to grow and develop their abilities. Doesn't matter where they start.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful, empowering idea, right? It suggests that education can level the playing field in a way, give everyone a chance to reach their full potential.
Absolutely, and it makes me think about how we approach education today. Are we too focused on labeling students?
Yeah.
Who's gifted and who's not?
Yeah.
Or are we creating learning environments where everyone feels supported and empowered to learn and grow? Isocrates, I think he'd definitely be pushing for that second approach.
Yeah, for sure. Now, speaking of Isocrates' approach to education, we've talked about how he wasn't just about producing smooth talkers. He really had strong opinions about the kind of communication he valued.
Oh yeah, definitely. Remember, he was super critical of those sophists and how they emphasized persuasion almost for its own sake. It was just about winning, not about truth or anything.
Yeah, he saw the potential for manipulation.
Truly. But for Isocrates, true eloquence, it wasn't just about rhetorical fireworks, fancy language. Yeah. It was about using language ethically, responsibly, with the aim of revealing truth and inspiring people to do good, to take positive action.
So it was about using words for good, not just for personal gain or winning arguments.
Right, exactly. He believed that language could be this powerful force for justice, wisdom, and social progress. And this is where his critique of those who are teaching like political speeches, it becomes really relevant, I think.
Yeah, that feels super relevant today, especially when you think about how divided and often manipulative political rhetoric can be. Like I wonder what Isocrates would make of our current political landscape. You know, all the speeches and the debates and the sound bites flying around.
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it? I think he would probably be pretty concerned by the ways in which language is so often used to distort the truth,
Yeah.
to sow discord and to undermine any kind of reasoned discussion. Remember, he was a huge advocate for originality and authenticity in speech. Like he really believed that good speeches had to reflect, that genuine originality.
So no empty slogans or sound bites for Isocrates.
Definitely not. He'd want us to engage in more thoughtful, nuanced conversations.
Yeah.
Recognize that issues are complex, that there are multiple perspectives. And he'd probably remind us that true persuasion, it doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from a genuine desire to understand, to find truth, and to shed light on it.
Yeah, and that's something we could all use a little more of these days, right?
I think so.
Mm.
Makes you wonder, though, right? Would he see any parallels between the sophists of his time and some of the figures we see in our world today?
Yeah, that is a thought-provoking question.
It is, and it's one we're going to dig into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll consider whether Isocrates' criticisms of the sophists, if those hold any water in our modern world, and we'll explore his ideas about originality and why he thought it was so important.
I am ready to unpack all of that. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So we've been spending some time with Isocrates, and it's clear he had some serious issues with those sophists, especially like their teaching style. He kept coming back to this idea of originality. It seemed like for him that was like the key to real education. But what did he even mean by originality, and why was it such a big deal to him?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think to really get it, to understand why originality was so important to Isocrates, we have to like put ourselves back in his shoes, back in that ancient Greek world. And remember, rhetoric, public speaking, it was like everything back then. It was how you made your mark, got ahead, persuaded people, and there was this huge, vast body of existing speeches, almost like templates or models that people would study and try to imitate.
So it was like they had this massive library of speeches they could just pull from.
Exactly. And for some, especially those sophists, the goal was just to like master those existing forms.
Yeah.
Learn the tricks, the techniques, but Isocrates, he saw that as kind of a shortcut, a superficial way to approach rhetoric. He believed that true originality wasn't about just copying or mimicking what others had done. It came from like this deeper engagement with the subject matter, like really thinking critically, analyzing and crafting arguments that were both persuasive and insightful.
So it wasn't just about being a smooth talker. It was about actually having something to say, some substance behind the words.
Right, exactly. Substance over style. That was a big thing for Isocrates. He believed that originality, it grew out of really understanding the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Doing your research, thinking carefully, and having a real desire to contribute something new, something of your own to the conversation, to the ongoing debate of ideas.
So he was really pushing his students to think for themselves, to not just like repeat what they'd heard, but to analyze, to critique, to come up with their own take on things.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think that idea, that emphasis on originality, it's more relevant than ever today. Like, think about it. We live in this world where information, it's everywhere. We're bombarded with it constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to just like passively consume all that information, to just repeat what we've heard without really questioning it or analyzing it or forming our own opinion.
Yeah. It's like the difference between just absorbing information and actually doing something with it, creating something new.
Right. Exactly. And this is where I think Isocrates' critique of the sophists, it really hits home for me, for us today. He was so suspicious of those who just wanted to dazzle with their words, those who were more focused on style than substance.
Yeah.
And I can't help but wonder, do you think he'd see like any parallels to our world today?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, think about our world. It's all about sound bites and social media influencers and carefully crafted, images. I think there's a good chance Isocrates might look at some of that and say, yeah, that's prioritizing flash over substance. That's not real education.
Yeah, I think you're right. Think about like just how much emphasis we put on presentation, on delivery,
Yeah.
on like how things look. It's not enough to just have good ideas anymore. You gotta know how to package them to make them like attention grabbing and and
Yeah.
shareable.
He'd probably be telling us to be way more careful about the information we're taking in, to really look beyond the surface and think about what's actually being said, what's the real message.
Well, absolutely, and to remember that real originality, it doesn't come from imitation. It comes from that deep engagement with ideas, from critical thinking, from being willing to challenge those assumptions, to question things.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here, our exploration of ancient Greek education, and especially Isocrates' take on those sophists, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What do we want them to walk away with?
I think the big takeaway is just to remember the value, the lasting value of a truly well-rounded education.
Yeah.
An education that's not just about acquiring specific skills or mastering techniques, but one that's about cultivating that critical thinking, that love of learning, that commitment to originality, to intellectual honesty.
I love that. Yeah, and maybe especially in our world today, a world that often seems to prize speed and efficiency over depth and reflection, maybe it's even more important to remember that message from Isocrates, that true education, it's a journey, not a destination. It's about engaging. It's about thinking critically, and it's about striving for that originality in everything we do.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive with us. Keep those minds curious.